Good evening and welcome to Alan's Italy. Tonight I'm going to be doing a show called Varenna, Then and Now. And I'll talk about that in just a moment. But first and foremost, this message goes out to my friend Carol. Get well soon, and certainly get well by tomorrow evening. And you know why. Well, we're actually going out to dinner and some gallery opening, so you have to be well for that. But you should also, I hope you become well soon. Okay, so on the way out today, every time I go out to do a show, this is 121st, Laura always says, break a leg, which, is in theatrical terms means, have a good show. And then she said, have fun. And I said, in response, I don't even think she heard, I think I was in the garage by that time, but I said, I'll try. And then I realized, I'll try to have fun? Like, if you're going to try to have fun, then are you really having fun? So I was just thinking about that on the way, and it's, I don't know, anyway. It's irrelevant to the show, but anyway, here we go. So let me bring up this first slide here. And I got to do a few things here, so just give me a moment. Hide sidebar, that's very important. And, oh boy. Oh, I don't know if you could, okay, there we go. I guess, can you see that, where it says Varenna, Then and Now? I didn't take that into account when I was creating the slide. So, okay. It's off the screen. That's my fault. Okay, so my apologies for that. I should know better than what I have to do when I create this slide is adjust the photograph so that it's smaller and the lettering is smaller so that everything goes up, but I didn't do that, so I apologize. But the name of the show is Varenna, Then and Now. Varenna, as you know, is a town that I focus on an awful lot. In fact, show number 120 was the show Side Trips from Varenna, when I spoke about that wonderful restaurant in the hills and also the waterfall at the town of Fiumilata, which is south of Varenna. But this is what happened. Laura and I were sitting in the lobby of the Hotel du Lac in Varenna during our last trip, and there was a book on the table which was called, I don't remember the exact name, but it was related to 19th century photographs from the town of Varenna. And what you're looking at on the screen now is one of those photographs, which we'll come back to a little later And those of you who watch the show frequently know that I really, really love 19th century photography in general, but mostly of Italy. And I've done a number of shows on with the then and now theme. And I think I focused on Florence. I did all of Italy. I did Tuscany. And I love those shows, and I love the concept of looking at a photograph of some image in some town in Italy, and then putting up on the screen the modern photograph of that exact place, and then talking about the differences between the town or that particular scene during modern times and going back sometimes 150 years. So that's going to be the theme of this show. But as I was doing this, I came to the conclusion that this is going to be a more difficult show than the other ones. And that's what I first like to focus on. There is the first show I ever did, and it was related to a photographic album that was bought for me by my friend, my very, very dear friend Luca in Florence. And so I did an entire show on Florence then and now, and it was easy because number one, I know Florence extremely well, and number two, most of the photographs that I chose to put on the show were very, very iconic photographs. For example, this is on the left, the photograph, the 19th century photograph of the Piazza della Signoria, which is one of the most famous sites in Florence. And then on the right is the photograph of how it looks, in the 21st century. And I focused in particular on the spot right in front of the Palazzo Vecchio. That's this big building is called the Palazzo Vecchio, which is the palace of the old palace, Palazzo Vecchio, old palace. And right in front is a copy of a sculpture that Michelangelo did, probably his most famous, which is David. And if you look at the 19th century photograph at the exact same place, you'll notice that David is not there. And the reason is that David was actually out there for hundreds of years. They decided to bring it in. And for a period of about 30 years, there was nothing in front of the Palazzo Vecchio. The first time in, 400 years that there was no statue of David in front of the Palazzo Vecchio. And, here, of course, you see it, but in this period, which I think is around 1870, the sculpture had been taken away. So I just find that a fascinating concept, and it was easy to focus on. Here's another very iconic photograph on the left of the Church of Santa Croce with the piazza in front of it, and then on the right, the 20th century, 21st century photograph of the Piazza Santa Croce. And if you look closely, you'll notice that right in the middle, let me show it to you, this is a statue of Dante. And that statue is not there in the 21st century. The reason is that they decided, the people of Florence, that they wanted to free up the piazza for soccer matches. And of course, if you have the statue of Dante right in the middle, it would be very, very difficult to have a soccer match with this giant statue in the middle. So they moved it over, and now if you went to Florence, the statue is on the left side of the church. I'm putting my cursor right around the current statue. So the statue was, so that's fascinating. To me, that's like just an amazing thing. And this is a photograph of the Piazza Repubblica in Florence. And, you could see the differences mostly in the horse-drawn carriages and the people, how they dress compared to in the current photograph, which, that piazza has turned into kind of like, stalls that hawk their wares of various kinds, leather and scarves and so on. So, that was easy because the Piazza della Repubblica, we have 1 million photographs of that. I also did a show, again, you probably can't see the bottom, but the show was show number 90, Italy Then and Now. And this photograph you're looking at now is of Pompeii, the way it looked in the 19th century. And I focused on a number of different photographs of Rome in the 19th century, and I did, other places as well. And there's the very, very famous church of St. Peter's, the cathedral. It's not a church; it's the cathedral of St. Peter's Cathedral as it looked in the 19th century. So that was easy because we have 1 million photographs of St. Peter's, and that was very easy to do. This is a photograph of what is called the Ponte Rotto, which literally means the rotten bridge. And what it is a bridge from Roman times. So this is, a 2,000-year-old bridge, the ruins of a 2,000-year-old bridge. And this is the current look of what that bridge looks like. But what I did on the show was I focused on right here. If you look right down here where this arrow is that I can't get rid of unless I move it away, but I need to put it there because I'm trying to circle it. But there were homeless people living right under the Ponte Rotto in the 19th century. And now, of course, they do not have that. So that was a very interesting, dichotomy there. And then I did a show called Tuscany Then and Now, and I focused to a great deal on Pisa. And Pisa was easy to do because there are so many iconic photographs that what you're looking at now is actually not an iconic photograph, because I pointed out that someone in the 19th century took a picture of the Field of Miracles, which is where the Leaning Tower is, the cathedral, and the baptistry, taken from the north, as opposed to the photograph that you normally see, which is that particular location photographed from the south. So I found that very interesting. And then I also focused on the Leaning Tower, how it looked in the 19th century on the right and how it looks nowadays. So that was easy to do because it was the Leaning Tower of Pisa, which is one of the most iconic photographs in the world. But so I decided that I was going to do a then and now of Varenna. And as I was researching the show and taking a 19th century photograph of Varenna and then trying to find the comparable photograph that we took during our, I think, 5 or 6 trips to Varenna over the past several years, it was very difficult to find the actual spot for a number of reasons. One was that I'm just not as familiar with Varenna as I am with, let's say, Florence or Rome or even Pisa. That was number one. Number two, I just, when we photograph, we don't say, oh, well, we're doing a show on Varenna Then and Now. Let's try to find the exact spot where this particular photo. We don't do things like that. We just walk around the town and take photographs. So I had a little difficult time finding the photograph. Sometimes I had to actually take it off the internet, which I didn't do that often on this particular show. But, I kind of had to do that. And it took me hours upon hours to do this particular show and put it together. But what I have, I believe, is pretty good. So let's take a look. So the first photograph I have is a photograph of the town of Varenna as you enter the town. And there's the church over there in the distance. And that's what Varenna looked like as you were coming into town in the 19th century with the main piazza straight ahead. And that is the modern photograph coming into town. And the reason I took this photograph, or Laura took the photograph, I should say, is that we were interested in the hotel on the left side, which is the Hotel Villa Cipresi. So we were actually taking a picture of the hotel, but we wanted to show where it was located. So, we got what turned out to be a pretty close view of what that looked like, that particular location in Varenna, then and now. The next photograph I came across was a photograph of the church, the main church in the town, which is called the Duomo. And, I was looking at this photograph, and I said, well, we must have a photograph of what the Duomo looks like now. And this is a very interesting photograph. It almost looks like it's not a photograph. It almost looks like it's a sketch of what the Duomo looked like then. So, okay, our phone is ringing, which is okay. Maybe it's related to the show of tonight. Okay, so it's not. Okay, so that's what the Duomo looked like in the 19th century. And this, of course, is what the Duomo looked like now. And I'm looking at the two pictures, and I'm saying, whoa, look at this, and look at this. Big difference. Can you see the difference, my viewers? Look at that very closely, the church, and look at this church. Okay, well, if you're having trouble, these are the two right next to each other. And you can possibly see, I suppose, two things. Number one, this circular window on the left side, and there's also one over here on the right side, which is out of the photo, is now replaced by these two windows over here, this one and then another one that's also out of the picture, but different windows. They decided to change the circular windows to this type of window right here. I don't know what figure that is. Part of it is a rectangular figure, but it's like rounded on the top. So that's one big difference. The other big difference is this window right in the center, which a lot of churches do have, was not there in the 19th century. So, 19th century Duomo and what it looks like now in the 20th. This is actually the 21st. It was taken in the 21st century. So that's very interesting to look at, I think. This is a restaurant. Actually, I think it's a restaurant and a hotel. But it kind of advertises itself as the Ristorante Ristorante del Sole. And it actually says over there, and also hotel. So that's a restaurant that we don't really frequent that often when we're in Varenna, but we actually did go to it during our last trip there. And that's a long story. We actually sat in the back garden and had some really fantastic pizza. But that's the way it looked in the 19th century. And as you could see, there are people sitting outside at a table. And this is, this is the way it is today. This is what it looks like today. And it's, pretty much the same. There are tables, there are people sitting outside. And I guess it's always been the kind of, iconic location where people sort of hang out, have good food, and get to sit on the piazza during people watching. But once again, there's a big difference between what the tables looked like in the 19th century and what the tables look like now. As you can see, first of all, it's actually advertised on the left side. Instead of being advertised along the front here that it's a restaurant and hotel, it's advertised on the side. Albergo means hotel, del Sole, and it says on the bottom that you can't see, and Ristorante. So it looks the same, with the balconies the same, but nowadays people can, and this is a very sunny spot. It's right in the middle, it's just off the piazza, but in the afternoon it gets pretty sunny. So that's what it looked like then. And people obviously might have had a hard time sitting there because of the sun. And nowadays, of course, there's umbrellas shielding people from the sun. And that's what it looked like. There's the photograph of that spot then and now. And Then I looked at this photograph, and I said, well, once again, that looks like the hotel. But it doesn't look quite like the hotel because I don't see a name, and there's that, down here, there's like a kind of like an archway, not a complete archway, but it's an archway with kind of like it looks like a Soto, what's that word in Soto Passage in Venice, where those Soto Portego. A Soto Portego in Venice is a pass-through a large building, and they have them in Venice a lot, where you kind of walk through the Soto Portego and you wind up in a completely different location because you've gone through this whole thing. So I looked around at our photographs and realized that we actually have this photograph, and it is indeed the exact same archway with I'm going to call it a Soto Portego, even though it's not, called that in Varenna. So there it is, that exact spot as it looked in the 19th century, as opposed to now. And then I found this photograph. This is a 19th century photograph of the steps in Varenna, which are known as contrade, which are, what the name of the people who live in Varenna call the steps. And this is fascinating for a number of reasons. Most specifically because there are children playing on the steps. And this is just a really cute photograph of some children playing on the steps in the 19th century. And, they look just adorable, number one. And, they're kind of wearing what, kids would wear in the 19th century. I could not find this photograph. So this is one of those photographs where I found other steps or contrade, and there's one of them. This is what they look like now. And I found this one as well, but I could not find a photograph of Varenna, the exact same location. So, that made it, that was very frustrating. I didn't want to do a then and now where I put them together because I just wasn't sure where this location was. I was absolutely certain what this location is. This is a 19th century photograph taken from a boat in Lake Como, looking back at one of the most famous sites in Varenna, which is the Villa Cipresi. And the Villa Cipresi, to us, is a very important place in Varenna because this is a hotel that we've stayed in probably 3 or 4 times. And we indeed had this room right here. We've had a few rooms, but this is one room we had right here where my cursor is going around. We also had this room on the side, which is a suite that was given to us because there was some sort of a mix-up and they wanted to treat us to a really beautiful room, so they gave us this suite, which we had. But this is the room we most usually have. And I said, gee, I don't know if we have this particular view of the Villa Cipresi, because this was taken from the lake, and I don't believe we ever took a photograph like that. But you see those trees in the front? We certainly took a picture of those trees, but from the completely different angle. We took a photograph of those trees with Lake Como in the background, and you can see that it's sunset, or it could be sunrise. Laura takes a lot of sunrise pictures as well. But that's the trees, and it could have been, if we were on that boat that you see right there on the lake, looking backwards, we would have absolutely been able to take this type of photograph. The best we could do was this photograph, which we took from the Villa Monastero, which is another villa right next to it, and you could look back and see that particular photograph. There's the hotel, and this is the room we actually had right here with, with that beautiful view, and it was really a beautiful room. And okay, so that was the best photograph I could find of the Villa Cipresi. And I even looked on the internet and couldn't find a full-faced picture just like that. There just wasn't any. But there were pictures from the side, which is a nice view anyway, because not only do you get to see the hotel with trees, but you get to see a ferry on the lake and the mountains, the snow-capped mountains in the back. You can see the mountains here with a little white on top. Those are snow-capped mountains above Varenna, probably in Switzerland. This is a very iconic photograph of maybe the most famous hotel in Varenna, although we've never stayed there. This is the Hotel Royal Victoria as it looked in the 19th century. And it's a huge hotel, and we actually have some association with the hotel, but not having stayed there. We've eaten in that little restaurant that you see off there to the side. So this is what it looks like now in the 21st century. And that's the Hotel Royal Victoria with their new addition. I don't know how new it is, but this area, this enclosed area, is now a little cafe that I believe we ate in once. So, and there's a car parked, obviously, that's a big difference. You see this over here on the right side. This is a menu for this restaurant. And the entrance looks considerably different from the way it looked back then. Back then it looked like a very plain looking entrance to the hotel. They had these figures on top here. And now, of course, it looks very much different, but it's still a very, very famous location. And they're boasting the fact that it is indeed a 4-star hotel. They have all these flags here. So it's very different. This is another view of the Hotel Royal Victoria, but from the side, so you could see that, and it's different because, this looks considerably different from this. There are some, I don't know what that is in front, maybe tables, maybe something else in front, but this is the way that almost exact scene looks now. It's a little off. This scene, you're actually also getting the entrance into the town of Varenna. Here, you're just getting the view of the hotel with the restaurant in front. And this is actually for a different reason, but the same view of the Royal Victoria. But really what I'm focusing on now is the entrance to the town from the main piazza looking out at the road that goes out into the countryside. And that's the way it looked in the 19th century. And this is the way that same road looks today. Again, we didn't know we were taking this photograph for the comparison. Otherwise, we would have gotten the exact same photograph. But this is a photograph of what the entrance to the town looks like then and now. And that's another view of the entrance. And this is from a completely different angle. This is much further in. See, here's a church over here, right? So if you look at this photograph, we're actually standing almost directly across from the church. So this is much further into the distance. In fact, in the distance, you could see the iconic trees that were in front of the Hotel Villa Cipresi, which I'm pointing to right now over there on the right side. This is the train station in Varenna in the 19th century. And, it's very interesting. We've been at this train station, of course, many, many times. And there's the tunnel that goes through the mountains and winds up on the other side of the mountain, probably in the proximity of the town of Milano, which is the next town going north on Lake Como. So get a look at that 19th century photograph and what it looks like today. And I'm not sure what they called the train station, but now it's called Varenna Essino. And Essino is, Varenna is the main town, and then Essino is another town kind of, more out and into the mountains that you're looking at now. So they call the train stop Varenna and also Essino. And also, I believe this building is a new building. So again, if we look back at the 19th century, I don't see a building on the left side. It could either be out of the picture or it may not be there, but there certainly is a building now. And of course the angle is quite different as well. You know, here you're on a different angle than you are. Here you're looking straight at the train. The trains, of course, are probably different. This is a photograph looking at the actual town, which I couldn't get the exact same photograph. It's a great photograph because it shows the fishing boats, you know, the boats that go out fishing, so you get to see what that looked like. Because, you know, Varenna, until the 20th century, was a fishing village, and gradually it became more of a tourist site. And this is the best I could do. This is the best photograph I could find, which actually shows you what the town looks like from a distance, from, you know, looking back at the town, but it's very different. So, you know, and I was searching and searching to try to find the appropriate similar picture, and I just couldn't do it. So here's a photograph of a dock, and I'm saying a dock instead of the dock, because I'm not sure that's the actual dock that exists today. And I'll tell you why I'm not sure of that. But this is what it looks like, you know, when you board a ferry boat. There's a ferry boat on the left, and, you know, there's the ferry terminal. And it now, you know, also has that awning over it where they sell tickets. So that was very interesting. And there's another view of it with that hotel. It looks like a hotel. I thought it was the Hotel Milano over there on the right side with a ferry boat in the dock, and people, looks like people even getting onto the ferry boat. And there's a really close-up view of that same area with the ferry boats. This is, you know, when there wasn't an awning over it, so this is a different, you know, period of time. So the best I could do is this one. And I'm not sure that yellow building in the distance is this yellow building. I think it is. It has 3 floors now. It had 3 floors then. So it could be the exact same spot. And, you know, but it's from a different angle. And I couldn't find a photograph that we took of that particular spot from this exact angle. You know, but next time we go back there, we'll take a look at that. But that's what the ferry terminal looked like then and now. That's pretty nice. And this is, once again, a view of the beach. That's a very small beach with the boats right there docked right at the beach. And this is the best I could do, which is pretty good. I'm not sure if it's the exact angle, but it's definitely giving you a view of what it looks like today. Of course, you know, it's just a beautiful town that I focused on a lot, and there it is. And then there's another view looking back from the lake at the town, the way it looked in the 19th century and the way it looks now. It's a totally different view, of course. You know, here you can see the church from, you know, that angle, and this is a completely different view of the church. So I think I'm much further to the north at this point, going more towards the ferry dock. And, you know, you see a lot of the interesting places that we have visited over the years along, you know, this walkway. And then, you know, I came across this photograph, which I love, because then, you know, again, this is a posed picture, obviously. You know, you could see the adult in the background, maybe the mother of those children, saying, okay, everybody stand here while we have a photograph taken. And, you know, with photography in the 19th century, you know, you really have to stand still for an extended period of time, so you can't, like, you know, take the picture and then walk away. So they were told to, like, really stay there a long time. I searched our photographs, and I think I found it, but I'm not totally sure. It doesn't quite look the same, I put them side by side so you could tell the difference. It doesn't look exactly, but there are a series of archways. If you look at the photograph on the left, it's an archway, and then you can see further in, there's another archway, and that's what we have in the photograph on the right. And then, of course, there's the window right above the arch, and I have a window on the right above the arch. And then there's another window above that where somebody has their laundry hanging out, and you can see that there is, so I think this could be the exact same location. Pretty amazing 150 years later, but not totally sure, because, I mean, here you see a gate, and here you see the gate, so it could be. Not totally sure, but I'm pretty sure about that one. This is a photograph related to something I did on the last show. Remember that I did the last show, side trips from Varenna, and one of the side trips was the town of Fiumicata, which has that waterfall and the shortest river in Italy that's only 800 feet long. And we took a photograph, but not the same angle. That's the way it looked by the angle that that person took. And this is the angle that we took of Fiumicata. And we took actually a number of photographs. This was one of them. This is another one. And finally, we also took one, much further up into the waterway. So obviously, a big difference between this photograph, the angle, but not, the thing has been a Fiumicata for all we know, hundreds of years. So, there's always that, waterfall effect that occurs, as I told you last show, from October through, I think, May. So during that time, people are allowed to see that, and that's what it looks like today. I didn't put them side by side because it was a different angle. This is the Villa Monastero, which nowadays is, it was a villa that was, was owned by somebody, and that's the way it looked in the 19th century. And now you could visit it, and we visited it a number of times. I put that on the last show, in fact. And I couldn't get the exact photograph of the Villa Monastero because we never took a photograph from the lake. So I took it off the internet. And this is what it looks like head on. This is more slightly to the north, looking south. And this is what it looks like just about head on. And we never took this photograph, but you could see it. This is, a magnificent villa. The photographs, we've photographed the Villa Monastero, the whole area, very extensively, but not from this angle. And these are the angles. This is one of my favorite photographs that has ever been taken by Laura in all of Italy. It's a view of the Villa Monastero at, I believe, its most beautiful, with the neoclassical columns over there on the left and the loggia right on the lake, with the beautiful gardens and the villa on the palace on the left side. Now, in the 19th century photo, you could see the loggia, right, and the neoclassical columns over here as I'm pointing to them over there. But, this is giving you a real close-up view of what a really, truly magnificent villa looks like, looking out at the lake, looking north. So we were taking this from the south, looking north. And this is another photograph that we took, more looking at the villa itself, but again, you could see the loggia and the column, but with beautiful, beautiful gardens. It's an idyllic spot to spend an afternoon. Another view, looking from a different angle. Now we're north of the gardens, looking to the south, and that's what that looks like. It's just, a magnificent spot. And this is, what I did was then I found a number of photographs I just couldn't match up. But I didn't want to not put them on the show. So I wanted to just show you what Varenna means to us as we stroll around the town. As we stroll around the town of Varenna and take pictures, photographs from the ferry, this is what it looks like. So I just do a series of what it looks like now, and then I go back to the 19th century. So this is Varenna to us. As you could see, truly a beautiful town. And you could see the ferry dock over there in the distance, with the ferry either pulling away or coming to the dock. And this is a panoramic shot that Laura did, which I think is one of the most beautiful also we've ever taken of Varenna, because you could see Lake Como, you could see the boats, you could see the mountains. This photograph was taken from the Barrio Molo, I believe. So that's what you're looking at in the foreground. And right over here that I'm circling is the very famous restaurant Vecchia Varenna that we eat in every time we go to Varenna. And that's a beautiful photograph. And these are some of the places we walk in the town. The narrow streets with the archways, looking down towards the lake. This photograph was actually taken from the piazza, the main piazza, looking towards what my viewers may identify. This sign, okay, if I were testing you, as I was testing my students last evening in the final exam that the course I teach, I would ask that question, what does that sign mean? And that green cross means that it is a farmacia, which is a drugstore. So that's actually a drugstore, that's open a lot. And, you could contact the drugstore if you need any kind of a prescription when they're closed, I believe, with the church over there on the left side. That's actually a better view of the street with the church. And right next to the church on the left, you'll see the same Ristorante del Sole that I showed earlier. This is a view of the main piazza, but swinging around, looking at it from a slightly different angle. And this is the way people looked at Varenna back 150 years ago, when they were taking pictures that they thought were magnificent pictures that showed what the town looked like, and this is what they would show. Without the color, of course, it takes on a different view. I think it's beautiful in black and white because it's just so fascinating, but in color, of course, it's just, really unbelievable. This is, a view of the, right on the beach, looking out across the Lake Como. That could be the town of Menaggio over there in the distance. I would guess. If this was one of those, you could win $1 million, I'd go with the town of Menaggio, but I'd probably first use as my lifeline my friend Simone, who owns the restaurant Barrio Molo, and ask him if that's really Menaggio. But very interesting photographs of what the town looked like back then. There's a wood pile you see over there on the right side. This is a great photograph of what the town looked like. I don't want to move too quickly because there's a lot to gather in, especially if you know the town of Varenna, this is a pretty fascinating picture. And there's actually somebody working on his boat right in the center of the picture. This is taken from the south looking north. Somebody rowing his boat, it looks like. Keep in mind that this is before I guess it was before the era of motors. I'm not even sure. But they certainly didn't use them on the boats then. I'm trying to determine if that's the Villa Cipresi again, right there, but I'm not sure. Another photo taken from the south looking north. And I showed some pictures of looking down the steps at the lake, and there's a great photograph with a young man over there on the lower left-hand side. Oh, there's two boys in that photo. I didn't even, I was focusing on this one, and I forgot that I didn't realize there was also another young man over there with that great hat. And a modern photograph, one of my favorites as well, of Lake Como. I believe this picture was taken from, Lord knows where all of these were taken. I'm gonna take a chance and say it was from the Ristorante Vecchia Varenna. So I'm just going with that. And that brings us to the end. Again, you can't see this photograph. Maybe if I don't do exit full screen, you could see it. Nope, not working. Geez. My apologies. It's just not, zooming in is not going to help. No, that's the wrong way. I should be zooming out, right? Maybe I could keep zooming out, and that would help it. Let me try. Nope, I can't do it. Okay, so that's full screen. You can't see it. Okay, so anyway, Alan's Italy, show number 122. The name of the show is Analyzing the Introduction. And what it is whenever you see Alan's Italy come on the air or come on YouTube, it has the two songs that I have plus a montage of photographs. And I decided that since you've seen those photographs so many times, now 120 times, that I should analyze what those photographs are. So the next show, and I haven't even told Ellen this, but I'm thinking of doing it next Friday. Okay, so I have to ask your permission, because I don't know. So I just thought I would do it, and I'll tell you why I decided to do what I haven't done in a really long time, which is 2 shows, 2 Fridays in a row. After that, all hell may break loose, because then we're going away to Italy. So for two Fridays we'll be lost then, and then we come back, and I should be able to do a show. I guess that would be June 10th. But then, I'm having cataract surgery. I don't know what my condition will be, so I'm not, but I'd like to do a show on Friday, next Friday. And it's going to be, and you can't see it. I'll fix that up, when I get home. But I'm going to analyze all the introductory photographs and tell you, where they are and when they were taken and why they were taken. And that's going to be the focus of the next show, Alan's Italy show number 122. And then I'll talk a little more also about the trip that we have planned, although, that's going to be a tight show. Let me do it now, because I think that the show, I have a few minutes, the show next Friday is going to be a little tight because I have about 40 photographs that I'm going to be analyzing. So the trip that we have planned that we're taking it's only going to be a 10-night trip because we're squeezing it in between all the things we have to do coming up in the future. But it's going to be a trip where we land in Rome, the Rome airport, and then we go to Siena, and we're actually taking a car service from the Rome airport to Siena, which is a long trip, and we just, it's either that or renting a car, or taking a very long, convoluted train ride, because you'd have to like take a train into Rome, another train somewhere else, and then switch trains to Siena. We didn't want to do that after getting off, a 20-hour day, so we decided that we would take a car service from the Rome airport to Siena, which I'm thrilled with. I don't have to, you just get off at the airport, and there's a person with a sign, and you get on there, and you just sit and relax for 3 hours. So we're doing that, and we're staying in Siena for 4 nights. I've been to Siena 3 times. Laura's been there twice, and we've never really spent a lot of time there, and we've never stayed overnight. So we're spending 4 nights, and hopefully do extensive photography of the, I shouldn't call it a town. It's really a city. It's a major, major city in Italy, certainly in Tuscany, of Siena. And then we're also taking side trips into Tuscany that our friends Lydia and Luca are driving us around, because I won't have a car. So that should be very, very interesting, and I hope to come back with a lot of material. Then we're going to Florence, and I have a few ideas for stuff that I haven't done in Florence, which I know is hard to believe because I've done so many shows on Florence, but we're going to do that. And then we're actually taking a 2-hour train ride from Florence to Orvieto, where our friend Franco Sala is going to pick us up and bring us to that incredible hill town of Civita di Banoregio, where I hope to do at least one show where Franco, it's going to be a video of Franco explaining the entire town to us. He's an expert because he's been, he owns a restaurant there and lived there. So we're going to do a video, and I'm going to call that show, I already have the name of it, Franco's Civita di Banoregio. And he'll be talking, and we'll be just showing different things. So that should be very interesting as well. And maybe we could find some part of the town of Orvieto that we haven't photographed, which could be pretty difficult. But that's going to be the show, series of shows done related to the next trip we take. So that brings us to the end of tonight's show, projects, and it was a pleasure. I love doing 19th century photographs. I hope you liked it as much as I did, putting it together. And for now, on behalf of Alan and myself, buonanotte e buona fortuna.